We are loading, it's loading to the platform. We should be live in about 5, 4, it's loading kind of slowly. Oh, 3, 2, come on. 1. Okay, we're live.
Hi, welcome to tonight's episode of Healing America with our collective sessions on the reparations chapter. With me tonight, I have Candace and former Senator Roland Burris. We will discuss further and take on from the last episode where we discussed with a United Nations representative and the former Australian parliamentarian who introduced the reparations scheme within Australia. It was discussed that the United States needed to recognize reparations as part of a UN-based initiative and recommendation, as well as the formation of a commission. On record, we had Justice Nawaz Ali Chahan, who's part of UNESCO and has been a judge in Gambia and the UN Hague in Switzerland. And that was his recommendation. The very next day, we saw Reverend Jackson take up an article recommending that a Civil Rights Commission also be introduced within the USA. And he went ahead further to say that that had been taken away from us in a post-Reagan era. I think now we are looking at civil rights more closely and agree that we need to have this Civil Rights Commission reintroduced. After that, we discussed with the Honorable Philip Ruddock, who has been part of a UN Human Rights Envoy. He has been the Minister for Immigration and Citizenship. He's also been a Multicultural Affairs and Indigenous Minister. He was one of the prime leaders that came forward on record and submitted an apology and came up with a commission, which they call the Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission, which then established cases that were brought before them for Indigenous people. Tonight, we're going to look at the Illinois scheme and what the former Senator Roland Burris has in mind for what reparations should be. This is an open discussion. We're not here to say what is right, what isn't right. We're just having a casual conversation with leading figures throughout the world, the greatest movers and shakers, and different minds. And we really feel that this should be something that all Americans should be part of. So I'm going to take it over to you, Candace. I'll let you talk a little further, and then we'll get to the former senator and we'll deal more with what he has to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is a very special chapter, a very special initiative that Collective Sessions has created. And I am just so honored and blessed and excited to be a part of this initiative and discussion. In addition to what Alia said, last week we started our chapter off with some experts. We had Honorable Philip Ruddock and Justice Alia Cohan. And tonight we have the former Senator Roland Burris. And I'm just excited to talk to him. I spoke to him a few times on the phone, and he shared with me his plan towards reparations. He was quick to correct me and said, it's not a legislation, Candace. I'm putting together some grants because of your ideology of just how quickly it could be funded and distributed back into the community. So I would like to have you talk more about your plan and your insight toward reparations. I do want to give a little background. I heard you did some acting yourself. Is that correct? I heard you were in a movie. You were featured in a movie.
Well, when I was in Germany as a student, I was definitely in a movie in Germany as a graduate student at the University of Hamburg. but you talk about the movie, it might be the one that Harrison Ford was in when what's that? The doctor who
Yes.
what is it? The Fugitive.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, you will see me in the St. Patrick's Day parade. That was 1992. It was a cold day in March, and everybody was Irish that day as we marched down State Street celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And I think I was the Attorney General at that time of the state of Illinois.
Okay.
That was just a cameo appearance. I had no idea what they were shooting until someone called and told me, we saw you in the movie, Roland, The Fugitive. And every time that movie is on TV, I get a call from someone letting me know that I saw you in the movie.
I love that movie. It's really, really, really awesome production.
Yes.
And I also want to tell people about that you served, you took over Obama's seat when he resigned, right, in the Senate?
That is correct. When Obama was president-elect, he resigned from the Senate. He had 2 years to go on his term. And of course, under the federal law, the governor has the authority to make appointments for the unexpired term for a United States Senator. If you're a congressperson, of course, you'd have to have a special election right away. But for a senator, a governor can appoint. And of course, after a lot of consternation and a whole lot of politicking, by the way, the governor had beat me for governor in 2002 in the primary. So the governor and I were in the Democratic Party, and we were both trying to become governor. He won the governorship in in 02, and he was reelected in 06. So it was that during his second term that Obama then was elected president in 08, and he was resigned in November of 08. And that means the governor had the authority to appoint to fill the vacancy. And after lots of consternation, as you all know, the governor ended up in prison because they accused him of trying to sell that seat. And they had tried to accuse me of trying to buy the seat. And of course, I'm a poor public servant. I had no funds to buy no Senate seat. But the governor reached out because of my support in the community, that the community leaders that prevailed upon the governor that he should appoint me to that seat. And of course, eventually that's what he did.
That's awesome. So we wanted to discuss the topic for tonight is reparations, specifically reparations for the African descendants of slaves, the diaspora. And your take on it is unique and it's different. And I would like for you to expound on that and share with the world your thoughts on reparations. Could you share with us, well, first of all, should America pay slavery reparations? That's the first question.
Well, there surely should be repair for the damage that was done to those Africans who were forcefully, and I mean forcefully, shipped not only to the North American continent, but all in the islands, the Caribbean and South America. There were millions of them that were absconded from the continent and sent to North America. And so my position, and by the way, I want to thank you, young ladies, for moving into this area with your organization and seeking to do something with your energy and dynamic contacts to try to make a difference for this hideous injustice that was perpetrated upon a race of people in this world. And there must be some accounting for the labor, for the suffering, and for all the commitment and advancement that those individuals made for the advancement of America. And therefore, they've taken a term which carries sometimes a negative connotation when you say reparations. but it is really an opportunity. For example, if you were to take my own personal situation, where I've done some research on my ancestries, and if you go back into the great-great-grandfather on the maternal side, you will find that that person was a slave in Georgia. And then everyone descended from him then certainly should be entitled to whatever he put in terms of his time and labor and efforts to which he got no compensation from. So if you take a comparable white person, his granddaddy farmed all the landowner down there that he was working for nothing. Well, certainly his ancestors were able to get resources, land, and other assets to pass on to their generations. That did not happen with us. That was nothing that my great-great-grandfather could pass on to me or to my siblings, or that I would have then to pass on to my descendants. So we have to try, ladies, to compensate for that. And there are various approaches that have been taken. Your approach is to do it legislation. There are some people saying that we should just make grants. There's the old, after Reconstruction, when there was 1865 after slavery, there was this concept of the 40 acres and a mule. Well, that was supposed to prevail, and some individuals actually got that, but when the North pulled out of the South, I don't have to go into that history, when then because of the presidential compromise, then the 40 acres and a mule concept just faded away. There was really no compensation. And then, of course, you had all this other activity that followed slavery called Jim Crow, segregation, discrimination, and just out and outright bigotry and disdain for people of African heritage. So, ladies, there should be some compensation to the heirs for that. And my approach, because I'm also a lawyer, and back in the early 2000s, around 2004 or 5, I was a part of litigation that was consolidated here in Illinois in the Northern District Federal Court for Illinois with all the reparations litigation that was filed across the country. And there were some 6 or 7 cases that were consolidated here. And I was representing a family out of New Jersey as their lawyer. And of course, we got nowhere. All those cases were finally dismissed. They tried litigation, tried to get reparations, because we had a client that was actually the granddaughter. She was in her late 90s and in the 2000s, and she was the granddaughter late, which means that it was just only 2 generations. And so that litigation went nowhere. And of course, legislation. Our late deceased Congressman, John Conyers from Michigan, had introduced legislation in the House of Representatives for quite some time, and that was to study. Well, my position is there's nothing to study. We know what happened. It's time to fess up, create some resources, so that those resources can then be redistributed to the heirs, so that those heirs then can have some balance and compensation for that which they were not able to receive from their ancestors. And as a result of that, my approach has been to create what I call a fund for descendants of American slaves. And that fund would take on key areas of grants to heirs. And how do you determine heirs? You do it by, the tracing back through the generations. So I'll stop there and see if you all have any questions. But that's how my program, it's a lot more involved, but I'll pass it back to you ladies.
My question to you is, why has it taken so long, or why are we still skirting around the issue of even an apology? Why is that taking so long? And who do you think should be delivering an apology, and when? Do you feel the time is right?
And by the way, Alicia, when I was, is it Alicia, right? Is that the correct pronunciation?
Alia. Alia.
Alia. When I was in the United States Senate, I tried to get an apology from the Senate floor, and it went nowhere. That's because, I think Bill Clinton, as president of the country, did apologize for slavery. But the apology is, it's meaningless. You know, what it needs has to be some type of repair. And repair would mean that you either come up with some type of monetary standards or some type of other assistance that's going to benefit the quality and the standard of life of those individuals. So, that's what an apology, Alia, it's a lot of things that some people find it very difficult to do because the ramifications thereof with their constituents. And if a politician has to then apologize for slavery, you get a white senator from Tennessee apologizing for slavery, a white senator from Georgia, or even a white senator probably from Illinois or Missouri apologizing for slavery, it will create consternation within his constituency. Because slavery is something that people want to forget. They don't want to hear the gruesome history of it. And a lot of them say, well, that was 300 years ago. Actually, if you take 1865 when it ended, what is that, 150 something years? So it is always something that carries just all types of derogatory or negative or reversed feelings with respective individuals.
Okay, and in today's time, what does 40 acres and a mule mean to you?
Well, it's a concept that I do not subscribe to right now. I mean, it was something that they came up with because of the old days where they wanted to try, get land and farmland, and they did give a lot of land away to white people, but none of that ever went to a significant degree to Black people. And so the 40 acres and a mule is a term that you might want to say, well, that would be a Lexus or a Cadillac now, or maybe a Mercedes Benz. So that's what that would be looking at, and that's what I don't want to see in terms of repair. I say repair should carry a different reward, a different benefit to it. And the repair should be where you will, not give me the fish, but teach me to fish. If you teach me to fish, what do you think I can do? I can feed myself and my whole family. If you give me the fish, I'll eat it and it's gone. So my program is saying that we need to create a fund that will operate in several areas. The fund would be to assist in individuals who are descendants. This is not for every Black person in America. This fund is only for descendants of American slaves. And once they have been determined that their ancestors, any one of whether or not you go back 4 generations, which means that there would be 16, 4 generations, mean there'll be 32 ancestors, great grandparents. And by the way, Candace and Alia, this is in geometric proportions. And if you look at my chart, I will show you a chart here, in my PowerPoint where you have two parents, right? Got two parents, and you have how many grandparents?
4.
4. How many great grandparents?
Oh, God. 8. Okay.
Okay. This here, so that's me. Paternal, maternal, and then that's my father's line. That's my mother's line. That just goes 4 generations. And you see how they multiply. If any one of those persons was a slave, then the person could qualify to be assisted with a grant for education, a grant for health care, a grant for housing and rental assistance, a grant for economic development, jobs, and business startups, or business assistance. So those, then the fund would then assess that need and make that grant to that person once that person has been certified as a descendant of a slave.
Okay.
I have a question. How would you go about proving? Alia, can I ask him a question? How would you?
I think it's the same question.
Okay. How would you prove that? What form of identification? How would you go about proving? Would you use a birth certificate, death certificate? What would the birth certificate have to say? Okay.
Death certificates. This is the death certificate of, I'm going to put my glasses on. I think this is my mother. And I have a lot of my ancestors' death certificates here. And I can go back 4 generations. My great grandparents on my mother's side came out of Georgia. And so under my plan, when my great grandfather, who was by the name of Major Green, when he was freed, he took the name of Major, and he took the name of his county that he lived in, Greene County, Georgia. So that's how he got the name Major Green. And so all we have to do is trace back through these documents, which is very easy to do. You'll use census tracts to identify that there was a person there. There are all these types of records. And you got these programs with Ancestry.com and Professor Henry Louis Gates does this program on public television, how he traced back ancestry. So ancestry tracing would not be that difficult. And with you having, if you go back 5 generations, you will get 256, I think it is, ancestors. This is your great grandparent, either on the paternal or maternal side. So there are 256 of these individuals. And if they were in Georgia in 1880, I said in 1800, 99 chances out of 100, that person was a slave.
That's right.
And so therefore, that would then qualify all of those descendants. And once, for example, if I qualified as a descendant, well, my siblings, they're now my brother and sister deceased, but they had children. So they would not have to, they can branch off of my research, and my nephews could qualify. And my great nephews, and I have great nephews and great nephews. So they are now living. So, and it's a question too of how many generations you will go forward. And that will be determined by my board of directors once we've established the full corporation, just how far and how long we will seek to take out the generations of descendants. Whether we go, for example, you take myself and my son and my 2 grandboys. Well, okay, if we start in 2020, let's say in 2080, we cut the fund off. That's just a number I pulled out of the air.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how you do it, Candace. You do it through the research, and I have my great grandparents' death certificates here.
Okay.
So who bears the burden of proof? Every case that's being presented to a commission, you say? I mean, how should we go about
Oh, yeah, well,
proving which one's a descendant?
see, there'll be in the corporation, there'll be a research team. The corporation will research things. It's individuals. These are staff people, and they will produce the documentation. But that documentation would then have to go to the verification department. And then it would be verified by a separate group of people that this person is a descendant.
Mhm.
All that. So we're not just going to accept what the research is, we're going to have the research confirmed.
Mhm.
And see, I also have in my PowerPoint how that would flow once the research is confirmed. So this is the work that see, this is the flow chart of how a grant. You can't read it. I'm sure you can't read it, but that's how it's presented itself. And you get up here. This is the intake, and then the person will do the research. There are verifications, and if the grant is approved, then it comes over here and it goes in the database, and that person can then make application for assistance. So this is something that is, and we have in here inspector generals. We have an audit department. We have a finance department. We have an IT department. We have all the operations of a corporation that would seek to operate in terms of carrying out the function of getting grants to those particular areas. And should something else come up that the board of directors would seek to approve, then they could very well do that. So this is not a end all of the situation, because it might be something I haven't even thought of and might be able to qualify once we get all this up and running, and I get about $2 or $3 billion in the fund raised from my good corporate friends and foundations and across the country where I plan to try to raise the funds. I hope to use my good graces, my qualifications, my background to carry enough, how should I say this, enough, I like the word juice, to be able to reach these major funders, because I'm not just some fly-by-night hustler. I'm not out trying to find a job for myself at my age. But this is something I feel deeply about, and having retired from the political arena and retired from the law practice, I certainly should go somewhere and go out to pasture. But being the person that I am, I just could not let this concept go, because no one else was putting this forward. There are all types of programs that's coming forward, and God knows that they should go forward, because there's more than one way to approach, repairing for the damage to American slaves.
Right. I am seeing that. I am seeing there are multiple different models. People have different proposals, and that's partly the reason behind the creation of this series, where we get to hear more about the different people that are working on their different projects. And we honestly, we're so thankful and blessed to have you this evening to go into further discussion, because even from abroad, we have the Honorable Philip Ruddock say on record that, he feels that in America, we're dealing with large number of cases. This is not a similar number count that we're dealing with in a country like Australia. So it is interesting to then go forward and be able to compare the different models and different research.
Australia is a pretty, homogeneous society. The British and a few individuals migrated there to take over from the Aborigines, and it's pretty easy to trace that. America is a conglomerate of the world. If you name a group of people, they are either here or they're on their way here. And America is the melting pot. America is the land of of opportunity for all types of, and of course, a good example is the Native American, who we call Indians, you know, do you know why we call them Indians?
No, I'm however you feel comfortable. I'm you know, I mean, I'm fine with whatever.
When the so-called Columbus, the so-called discovered America, he thought he was in India. He was trying to get a new route to the east to get his herbs and spices and things, and he landed, you know, down in the islands, and so all these individuals, and he said, "Oh, these are Indians." And there's a whole country of India, which had nothing to do with these Native Americans,
Right.
who were here. So that's that story, Alia. Yes, Candace, go ahead.
I have a question. What would you say to the people that would say to you that reparations is a debt owed, not a handout?
Well,
It's a debt owed. It's something that we've already worked towards. So
okay, it's a debt, but and what you run into is, if you give out, as some of the programs are saying, we'll give each Black family $100,000. Well, you add all that up, and I guarantee you that within a year, you will see no major benefit from that $100,000. So that's the reason why my approach is that you will use the grants for the specific area of the specific purpose for the housing, so that person doesn't have to worry about paying rent for tuition at a university, or the person that has gone 4 years to college, as my son and daughter did. My daughter just paid off her student loans about 3 years ago. She had about, you know, thousands of dollars. My son's still owed for his law school student loans. And so if I could get a grant to say that, okay, he should not have to, be in that type of financial crunch. He can't even get things going because you're in debt.
yeah.
So the payment would take care of that debt. Oh, by the way, as the gentleman did at the Morehouse graduation, you remember that? What's his name, Mr. Jones? What did he do for the class of 2018?
He paid off
all of their student loans.
Student loans, yes.
And see, now they can start out at a much financial rate, financial status, than what if they're now trying to get rent, get a job, pay some loans, for getting married, get a family. I mean, and the student loans is out of there, it's no longer a burden to them. So that's what reparations would be like.
Mm-hmm. Yes. My father is a Morehouse man, by the way. So.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. I got a lot of friends, Candace, who come out of Morehouse. Of course, I'm a Howard man.
Okay.
Howard Law, the class of 1963, Howard Law.
Okay.
I was there during the days when Thurgood Marshall and Spotswood Robinson and Jimmy Washington and Herbert Reed and all those civil rights icons were, in their heyday of civil rights practice.
That's awesome. That's phenomenal. So could you, let's see. So the barriers, do you foresee any barriers for the funding for grants or anything? Or do you think the process within the Biden administration specifically would be a good thing, would help things move a little quicker?
Well, yeah, I would hope so. Biden, by the way, I know him personally. There's a story that I tell that when I had my first day in the Senate, January 15, 2009, I was getting ready to cast my first vote in the United States Senate. And I was at the table and someone tapped me on the shoulders and said, "Oh, turn around, Vice President-elect Joe Biden." I said, Mr. Vice President, I just cast my first vote in the Senate. He looked at me and said, yes, I'm Mr. Vice President-elect, I called him. And he said, oh, yes, and Roland, I'm getting ready to cast my last vote in the United States Senate. So, because he was still a senator, he hadn't quite resigned yet. But yeah, I think, Candace, that they will, I don't know how the federal, I certainly intend to reach out to the federal government for assistance for my fund, and hope that they would make some financial contributions to it. However, my fund would be so large that what I'm talking about, I really have to go to the major funders as your foundations. There's the Gates Foundation, there's the Ford Foundation, all of these major industry foundations that I would be knocking on the door of to seek to get the funds. And will it be hard? Yes. Is there a resistance to it? Yes. I mean, ladies, if this were easy, it would have been done some time ago. If this were simple, we would have had this problem solved. But this is not going to be easy, and I'm not going to have a easy time getting my not-for-profit funded, because the people are going to have to research me to see who I am. They're going to determine what is this, but I'm hoping that I carry enough credibility, I carry enough of a positive background, being a former senator, a former attorney general of my state, former state comptroller of my state, a former banker, the first officer of the biggest bank in our state, the first Black officer of that bank, and lended money to Black businesses. So my background certainly lend itself for honesty and integrity. And that's what I would have to sort of lean on to try to get people to trust in me and look at what I'm setting up. I'm building all of these checkpoints in there. So this is not just a fund that's going to go out and buy everybody a Mercedes Benz or a Cadillac for General Motors purposes, or as they want to say, those are Chevrolet or a good Ford. Those are our American companies.
Okay. Why did you, as far as the legislation route, from your experience, why do you think that pushing for a legislative bill to be funded would be a little more difficult as opposed to a grant?
Well, I assume you're talking about funding.
Funding, yes, sir.
You're trying to get legislatures to fund this. As I hope that you would take a look at what's happening in our city just north of Chicago. Alia, you might be interested in this, is what's happening in Evanston, where the Evanston City Council has agreed to create some type of reparations fund, but they don't know how. They haven't funded it yet, but they did pass a resolution in their city council to do something legislatively with reparations. But they don't have it worked out yet. I certainly plan to reach out to them to show them how this here could work. My program could work into their program. But the legislature is a political body, and you got all these vested interests. And if John Conyers at the Congress, after 40 years, couldn't get a committee to study reparations passed, the question is how much can you get for grants for reparations from a political body? Now, I'm certainly going to try to get grants from governments, but I hope that they will come, through, but that's not going to my sole source. My major source would be the private side, through individual foundations, individual corporations, and grants through those sources. But certainly legislation is a vehicle, and all vehicles should be used. Just like the virus that we're getting ready to, try to overcome now with our vaccines. There are 3 or 4 vaccines that are coming on the market. So we're not just going to use Pfizer. You got Model and a few more of the pharmaceutical companies that are coming out with their vaccines. So we should approach this from as many angles as we possibly can. And hopefully that will begin to address the problem. And my problem is not to try to give money to every Black person, because then you get into the question of who is Black. That was, that took me a month or 2 in research, and I had to just not use the word Black, because being Black does not tell you anything in terms of reparations for the free labor that the ancestors put in. Because reparations is not just to give every Black person in America $10,000 when that person has no ancestry and nothing to do with slavery. So that's just a handout, and I'm not seeking to stop that, but I'm not also seeking to promote that. I'm trying to promote compensation that my great-great-grandfather did not get, so he had nothing to pass on to me, because all of his labor, all of his energy, he got nothing for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Makes you want to just take a moment of silence. No, it's that serious. And today we're still, I am an African American descendant of a slave. I like to represent, I think I might be a 5th generation,
Sure.
but my mother and my mother's mother was born in Knoxville, Tennessee. And so I know somewhere down that line, we somewhere, if I look at her, it's interesting. I looked at her birth certificate, my mother's birth certificate, and it says Negro. Now this is my mother's birth certificate. Her grandmother says, my mother's birth certificate says colored. Yes. My great grandmother says Negro.
What did your grandmother say?
I don't know. I have to check that out.
You skip one. You said,
I did.
Your mother's Negro. Your great grandmother is colored.
Yeah. My mother.
But Candace, that was a terminology that would be used for Black folks. We've been Negro, colored, and African American. And that's the jargon that gets you all confused, but that's what we've been, labeled. And we finally got around to accepting Black. If you call me Black when I was growing up at 13 or 14 years old, some 50 or 60 years ago, those are fighting words. That was worse than the N word. Okay. Now we've come around through the common use and understanding of this to say it is now an acceptable term that is usable for people who have a different complexion on their skin. But I tell everybody in this world that the skin may have a different complexion, but what color is the blood?
Red. We all bleed
the same color red blood.
Yes.
And that's what keeps us alive. And why someone would then try to judge other people based on their complexion when nobody on the face of this earth had anything to do with their being born. No one had nothing to do. But yet and still, we get this learned behavior to try to chastise or think that we are better than because of. You'll get me to preaching here in a minute, but that's where I really get a little wound up on it, because
No, I think it's very important. I think it's so important to let those feelings out, because right now the two of you are representing African descendants of slaves.
Yes.
So right now you're the voice of majority of that population. So I think it's just so important to let that outlet, get it out, and to restart working towards a conversation, towards some form of resolution, which is what we are doing now.
And Alia, I want to thank you for being in this, because this certainly is not your ancestry. As I understand, but you understand you're committed to be a player and seeking to bring justice and equality into this whole scenario that's gone on for centuries. And you certainly ought to be commended. And I do want to really thank you for whatever effort that you're putting into this. And probably you got some of your colleagues who are not of African descent, and they're certainly assisting. So God bless you.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. I would, this brings up a thought, an idea of that we could change on our birth certificate, even on the census, to ADOS. So we can be established as a certain set or a certain group of people, which I think could assist in the funding and then the reparations initiative. That's just a thought, but
You sent Candace to put it on documentation that
yes.
you're the American descendant
of slaves, yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, in order to get any assistance from my fund, you would have to be.
Mm-hmm.
And as I tell the story that our Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, who, by the way, was a senior at Howard undergrad when my son was a freshman, and know each other, she could not qualify for my fund because her father was Haitian and her mother was Indian. And she is not a descendant of a slave. Now, take Barack Obama. President Obama was a child of an African and a white American. He's not a descendant of a slave. But Michelle may be, so the two daughters could qualify. Follow me?
Mm.
So that's how that would flow. And you'll find that some persons along the line may not qualify at all because, they came from Africa, they came from India, they came from China. And we have all these, in Japan, all these interracial marriages, which is certainly their prerogatives to do that. But they're not then of the slave descendancy. So, and whether or not some of those persons would be entitled to reparations or entitled to some type of funding, that's another program. Because their ancestry, now unless you can trace back and to find one of those who was here on the soil, given free labor, then there's no reason for them to be assisted through reparations.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, this has been very, our meeting, our conference with you, Mr. Roland Burris, has been very informative. And we would love to keep in contact with you as to our progress and also as to your progress. And perhaps extend a helping hand in your efforts and you to ours. Alia, would you like to say any closing remarks? Hours gone by really fast.
Just before I close, I want to know what he believes in a post-Trump era, in a post-Black Lives Matter. Actually, we're still currently in a Black Lives Matter. We're transitioning to a Biden government. Do you feel right now is a good time to reignite this conversation? And do you feel that, say, your corporation would receive a better response now than previously?
Oh yeah, I think the time is right. And this is not by accident. I don't know whether or not you all are religious, but I'm a religious person. And I think that this is the hand of God that is bringing all of this about at this time and working on the conscience of people who have been benefited by those circumstances, that it's time for them to wake up and reverse themselves. Because you see now that the white community is really now trying to say, what has been going on? What did my ancestors do?
Mm-hmm.
If they have been taught these things and or either not been told anything or been advised that they are for some reason superior and that they are entitled, that they're now waking up and saying, my God, is this how they treated people? That officer's knee on that Black man's neck, George Floyd's neck, really woke up white America. And it did wake up Black America. We know what's going on. I mean, it's been happening all the time. And just didn't have no film or any documentation to show what's been happening to Black, especially Black men. And also, to some extent, Black women. There is a racist structure here in this country. And you see it's happening just yesterday. And it's perpetuated somewhat by Donald Trump. Donald Trump is seeking to divide America and want to probably create a civil war. I will not be there. That's what his actions are leading toward. He is doing insurrection. And if we don't put him in check, and he got 74 million votes. This is what Biden and Harris are going to have to work with. 74 million people voted for this person to be president. If he got another 4 years, America will not be America. And the question of it is, can we keep it America? And that's the problem Biden is going to have, because there are people now who believe. But this person is saying that the election was stolen from him. And just think about it, ladies. Think about this. In 2016, he was talking about, when he was running for office, that he knew he wasn't going to win. So he was preparing to say that the election was crooked. And when he won, he didn't say anything, right? But then when it came up for re-election, he started planting that seed. And that's the seed that he was trying to plant, but he thought he was going to lose the first time. And that seed now is being planted, and people are believing that the election was stolen from him. And therefore their representation is now being pushed aside, when no way did he win the election. And therefore, Alia, really have the problem today of how we're going to address this. And the Black Lives Matter movement, all the other movements that are springing up, it's because the time is right. The timing is right for this to happen. And I have been working on my program for the last 5 years. And I just got in time where I could really sit down and try to craft something that would make sense. And since I'd retired from my law practice, and crafting my concepts is what I've been able to do over the last year or so. So this is not something that I just, woke up one night and dreamed, so I'm gonna put this together to try to get me some money. This is something that's been going in my head for the last 10 years at least, or sooner, or longer. So.
Thank you. In closing remarks, I'm just going to say that I do agree all movements are interconnected. We did go from the Me Too movement to the Black Lives Matter movement. And right now we see in India, a whole bunch of farmers of resisting the conditions in which they work. And on record, that's approximately 250 million farmers. This is unprecedented. This has never happened. We are seeing people now with the power of social media coming out, coming alive, and really taking to charge the power that they have in their hands. And that's what we have tonight. We're utilizing a platform called Zoom in conjunction with AIA Inc., courtesy of Candace. And we also have TST Productions that have come forth. This is the platform we're utilizing to discuss right now what Healing America could possibly look like. We're talking about the reparations chapter in American history. I do believe that we are in the land of the Lincoln, in the state of Illinois. We should be one of the, at the forefront of this movement, I believe. I'm not sure if you all feel the same way, but that's where we started. Tonight we had Roland Burris, who was the first African-American to be elected statewide in Illinois. He was elected as a comptroller. He served as the Illinois Attorney General. He succeeded Barack Obama in the United States Senate. He was the National and Executive Director in Operation Push just during the year of 1977. Among other things, he ran for mayor, he ran for governor, or attempted to. And he's also featured in the Hollywood blockbuster, The Fugitive. So I think that's an interesting thing we have tonight. We have, a Hollywood with us, including Candace. So, and we have the both of you that come from descendants of slaves. And I think this is just honestly a blessing to witness American history going forward tonight. One of your favorite quotes, I'll end it here. If we as a race of people are going to get anywhere in society, we've got to have lawyers and selected officials who are responsible and responsive. That's what my dad said, and it resonated with me. And I'm sure that's what you carried when you came about with your idea for the formation of a corporation. Anything else?
Well, I just want to thank you all and wish you all the luck in the world, and we must stay in touch. So
Yes.
please feel free to give me a call, because I know after the first of the year and when the virus kind of died down, I will be really moving forward. But this virus has created a slowdown on my activities, and want to encourage. And Candace, you're making the films. You're the film producer here, and God bless you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And I am just enamored with your background, Alia, and you're getting into this fight for reparations for descendants of American slaves. God bless you, and you're commended for doing that. And I'm sure we will be successful.
We
Yes.
also have the Illinois Green Party, who is also working on this matter. We're willing to
talk to Candace about the politics of the Green Party, okay?
Oh, gosh.
We had a big God bless you, Green Party.
God bless you. Yes.
All right.
Yes,
Okay.
and a speedy recovery. Speedy recovery.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, good night, everyone, and we will definitely be in touch.